Okay, there we go. Ah, alright, that's where my mic comes in. What's up, Decoded? Ah, okay, how do I sound? Is this good? This is a different mic. I have yet another different headset. Excellent. Love to hear it. Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right, so that's good. Yeah, I have this one's even wireless. Look at this. I can move around. Hey, Merful. Oh, thanks for the follow, Sergeant Clear. But hey, everybody. Thanks for coming on in. Um, Hello, Gash Bell and Sergeant Clear. How's your day? Well, my day just started. I actually just got up, and now I'm just furious about the whole daylight savings time thing here in America, uh, because it's 9 o'clock, but it's telling me it's 10 a.m. You know, it's just but I know that it's a lie. Not a big daylight savings time fan. Now all my stuff has moved back an hour. But yeah, anyway, so plan for the stream today. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Gabe Dark, Carter Kane. What's up? Dragon Gods 22, Coda Beer. But yeah, so my day has just started, and plan for the stream today is probably just go over this video a little bit. I think I only have like a couple of questions in here that are new. Yeah, it's just not really much in here. Um, so I don't even know if I really need to get to those. There's really not much in the question stock today. I have not been getting a lot of questions recently. So, hey Nick, when is GAT going to expand its influence to the Arcane team with GAT members on SRT, Wild Rift, TFT, Val, and Worlds? Uh, Honestly, it it's kind of impressive how widespread GAT influence already is. I don't know if it needs to expand more. Why would you do that to Cloud Drake? I'll talk more about that when we get to it in the video. Um, but uh, I think I don't think it's that crazy or like it should be that surprising. It's like Cloud Dragon is in every version of the Elemental Dragon system that has been in PC League or Wild Rift, Cloud Dragon has always been less appreciated than it is powerful, and the terrain has never really been very exciting. It's kind of like I think again, I can go more into this when we get to this in the video, but it's kind of like um it's kind of like, okay, well, why would like what is motivating us to put this in the game if it's something that players don't really appreciate, when we could just not make it, right? Like, um are you going to be covering the announced items? No, no, no. So to be clear, I'm not going to be saying anything that's like I'm not going to be telling you anything that you don't already know. I'm not. I can't tell you like this is what the item changes are going to be. I can give you a general sense of what we're thinking, and I'm not going to tell you like this is exactly what our changes are going to be. But yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll talk more about that when we get to the items and stuff like that. Are you going to rework Shyvana in the future since Cloud Drake will be removed soon? We do have plans to make Shyvana changes. What exactly those are have not yet been determined. But that is something that my team and Champ's team have been looking into. How are you going to balance the best champ in Wild Rift, River Shen? Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to seeing Shen on live. Um, I've had a good. I haven't played him super recently, but like when he was earlier in development, I was playing him a decent amount. I was having a really good time. Um, Thank you for the nice stream already. Wow, I don't know. I've been streaming for like, what, like 7 minutes. I'm glad to hear it's already nice. Okay, so I'm gonna get. Oh, let me answer this one long question. So I watched video, watch your podcast, Alex Scoundrel, where he said Solar Charge, but it's not originally designed for Yasuo. It's kind of awkward for him right now. Does that mean we'll be dead for him for now? No, it's a crit item. We have no problem with Yasuo buying it. The problem that we have with Yasuo purchasing it, on the in the current environment, is that it instantly gives him 100% crit in a really awkward way. We don't necessarily have a problem with Yasuo getting 100% crit from a small number of items, or that it's a powerful item on him. It's a crit item, right? It's like crit items are generally supposed to be good on Yasuo, right? That's the whole point of his passive. Um, the reason why we don't love the way that Solary Charge Blade is on him right now is that it gives him 100% crit, but only under certain conditions, which means that many players read Charge Blade as the Yasuo players and they say I should only buy this as crit item, um, but then they either number one feel bad about buying more crit, which we don't really like because he's supposed to buy like 100% actual crit, and then it's like as you buy more attack speed, you'll actually get to the point where you don't have 100% crit on Yasuo with just Charge Blade, so it's really awkward. Um, yeah, it's quite awkward. Please answer when Karma used her ultimate, she got full mantra stacks. I'm only one noticed that. You'll have to look more into that one. But her mantra counts as a spell. Uh, can you tell me how many champions did you play in Wild Rift that we don't have yet? I don't know actually. I mean, I've like as an example, like you can go look at the dev blog post. I've played some champions that like some early prototypes that were never planned to make it to live or that got scrapped. So the number is probably pretty high. Like for example, you can look at the dev blog about Viego in Wild Rift. I actually played Viego in Wild Rift. He was totally non-functional, but I played him. I mean, and by non-functional I mean like he was literally playable, but like lots of stuff didn't work. But lots of times. Hello from JP server. Oh, cool. Nice to see. Have you thought about implementing ChemTank and make Iceborne Gauntlet like on PC? It's something I mean, ChemTank is not something that we could reasonably make really. Like, in terms of the active, because it's basically just Righteous Glory. In terms of the passive, it's like I'm not really sure we want that effect. Iceborne Gauntlet is something that we could probably consider at some point, but not something that we've looked at into recently. Why you decided to bring anti-tank item when tanks are already in a bad spot? You might feel like tanks are in a bad spot, but you would statistically be wrong. Tanks are quite strong overall. Like Nunu, Rammus, Malphite, pretty much all the tanks except Gragas are actually like statistically really strong. So the reality is that uh, tanks are powerful, even if they're not like. It's a separate problem if players don't feel like tank power is appreciable. But ultimately, it's kind of like, well, that's a separate problem. Um, it's a separate problem if tanks are not sufficiently appreciable. Um, that having been said, oh hey, thanks Stuart for the raid. But that having been said, uh, what I'll note is that Divine Sunderer is not necessarily as explicitly a anti-tank item as people might think, right? It's like, yes, it has percent damage and healing, but it has no attack speed, right? Triforce having attack speed on it is a pretty big deal for being anti-tank, right? Like giving you extra DPS. Still waiting for Garen nerf. I would love to pull some base damage out of Garen and give him some more AD ratios, for sure. Because I think currently my problem statement isn't necessarily that Garen deals too much damage, but that Garen deals too much damage while building too durable. Stu won't do viewer games anymore. You hate to hear that. Can we still get old and original background music from PC for Champion Select and in-game background music? I don't really know anything about who handles those things, to be honest with you, so I have no idea. Apologies. Endstep streaming today hype. Love to hear it. Still waiting for Annie Jungle clear buff. I would love to buff Annie Jungle. Annie Jungle sounds kind of sweet, and it doesn't sound like it would be totally non-functional with her. With the way that her Q works in Wild Rift having small AoE on it. Are you planning to release a Wild Rift exclusive champion? That'd be a question for a champs designer. It's not really my area, so I don't know. There's this website, WildStats.gg, where people can access some information regarding win rate and pick rates, but how accurate are these stats? If you can give any information regarding that. I have not spent a lot of time looking at wild stats, but I've had people message me about things where I'm just like, that stat is so far off. I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm pretty sure that what they're sending me is like from wild stats. Like I had some person tell me the other day that Camille was 43% win rate, and I was just like, no, that's not true. But yeah, what I could say is I have not spent a lot of time looking into it, but I've had people message me with things that are certainly not close to true. Not sure if you're able to answer that, but will a winner's approach still be ability haste item, or is it changing to health like on PC? It is changing to be more like PC. I will not tell you the exact details of that, but I will say that generally we like the PC version more, which is why we're changing the item. Um, Ignored. Oh, sorry, Stuart, I missed it. I'm sorry. It's going okay. I was talking about this earlier, but it's daylight savings time here. This is today's daylight savings time here in America, so I'm kind of mad about that whole situation. I'm not a big daylight savings time fan, so it really should be 9 a.m. 9:30 right now, but it's actually 10:30 for me. Um, Okay, is AP Karma mid feels better than PC based on your internal test? No, I think AP and mid lane are both probably overall a little worse than PC. I think generally speaking, my Karma experience was that you should probably play her with support items, and the support role feels a little better overall. Not necessarily to say that she's like non-functional in mid lane, but I definitely preferred her in support. Not to say that that's even her best role. Wow, thanks for all the follows, people. Not to say that even that's necessarily her best role per se, but like more just saying that like when I played her internally, I had the best time with her in support, and I definitely was way more successful with support items than AP items. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's like the long-term most successful thing going on there. Okay. New AP items win. I would love to do new AP items, for sure. But there's lots of stuff we want to do, and we only have a limited amount of time to make new content, so we have to kind of pick and choose our spot. And I'll tell you, like right now, is like these bruiser items that we made, Sunder and Hullbreaker and the Death Stance changes. Um, these are things that were pitched a long time ago. Like these are things that we've had in reserve for a while that we brought in, or well, I think they were originally supposed to ship in patch 3.0 actually, and they got pushed into 3.1. We had a lot of stuff get pushed out. So these bruiser items are things that have been coming for quite a long time, and uh, it is not like we were like recently like bruiser items. This is exactly what we want to ship in 3.1. It's kind of just what happened to work out to come in 3.1. Is this combination of stuff like the summoner spell changes as well. Um, let's see. On who do you think the new Fibble winner will be good? I can only think of Gragas. It should be good on like Nasus, and good number of other tanks. It should be a lot. The new version should be a lot more broad than the current version. Is our hope. I mean, that's what we've seen from PC. That's why we're doing a lot of the changes that PC has done to the item. We're hoping that that's where we go. Uh, What's the use case for Sunder as opposed to Triforce? It's obviously better for more sustained combat or champions that don't value attack speed as much. It's an item that doesn't have attack speed on it, right? Like, and it has it is a sort of the more, how do I put this? It's a like nicer short trade item. It's a nice it's a nice item for champions that don't necessarily get a lot of value from their auto attacks specifically, but do like to auto attack every 2 seconds or so. So there's a lot of use cases for for things like a champion like Wukong, for example, who already has a big attack speed steroid and doesn't value attack speed from items as much, might value the Divine Sunderer quite a bit more. And then champions like Jax, there'd probably be situations where you'd want the Sunderer over the Triforce. As channels remain, SLE CJR is extremely unliked by the community as you don't support Garen, but other than that, I don't see a lot of use for it. There's definitely things we'd like to do about CJR. I talked about this in the podcast with Exandrel and Stuart, but currently the original designer of CJR is working on some changes for the item that are potentially upcoming at some point, and we'll see when that happens. And if not, like if they don't work out, then I'll just buff it, and I will keep buffing it until people want to buy it. Because currently it's honestly just kind of weak and also kind of feels bad, and the designer's trying to work on both of those problems at once. Roguefool is trying to make some changes for that. Any info on QSS buffs? I want to buff QSS, and I will definitely be pitching those soon, but not in the current. This headset has this random weird problem where it turns off. This wireless headset. I'm not sure why it does that, but it just decides. Sometimes it's just like you're done talking. It's over for you. I don't really know why it does that, but that's what just happened. So if it happens again, I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do. It just does that. Yeah, definitely headset gap. I don't know why it does that. Uh, Why Elder Immolation doesn't have a new indicator on enemy health bar indicating when enemy will execute it? We'll have that if that was the a version in testing. Like we would add the indicator when we wanted to ship that to live if we're going to ship the Elder execute. So can you say what changes are coming to Solari to make it better for ADC? The only thing I've said so far, and I can't tell you exactly what the change list is, but I'll tell you it's not going to give conditional 50% crit because we think that that's kind of a problem for a number of champions. So it's going to be different, and it's not going to be. The hope is that it is returned more to an 80 carry item, more in the line of scaling with crit and being a good crit caster item, more so than this thing by itself gives you 50% crit under certain conditions that that allows you to scale crit in a weird way on some caster melees. Is there any character you want in Wild Rift? Yeah, I would love to have a number of champions that I really like in PC. I would love to have Volibear. Big Volibear fan. Mordekaiser would be cool too, actually. Gwen would be cool. I'd like a lot. There's a good number of champions that I'd be a big fan of, especially champions that I worked on when I was on PC. Would be really fun. Do you play often? I haven't been playing a lot recently, honestly. If I'm being real here, if I'm being upfront, I've not played a ton recently, but I try to play at least a couple games a day, most of the time. And when I'm like working, when I'm playtesting, it's like we play 2 games a day just in playtests, which is a pretty solid number of games if you think about it. It's like I work 5 out of 7 days a week. That's 10 games, right? Every week just from playtests, and then on top of that, I usually try and play a game or 2 every day. Though I haven't been doing that recently. You want Aphelios? I think a lot of people I've seen saying like Aphelios would be impossible, and it's like no, like in terms of actual functionality, Aphelios is really not that hard, right? Like making Aphelios would be easy. The difficulty would be the immense burden of knowledge we would be putting on all players to know what Aphelios does, right? And that has gone like that has seemed to be potentially maybe even a little bit too much for PC. And in Wild Rift, generally, we try to make the burden of knowledge for champions a little smaller. So Aphelios would be pretty tough, for sure. Um, Holy, I am way too far past the patch. All the bullets and changing guns, etc. Yeah, it would be a lot. Do you guys have fun in playtest, or are you really seriously trying things? It depends on the playtest. Like a lot of our playtests are more on the like more casual fun, like trying stuff outside. But some of our playtests are a little bit more serious, depending on what we're trying to test. What I'll also say is that the game analysis team, GAT, um, also has playtests for Wild Rift pretty frequently. Their tests tend to be a lot more serious, and I sub into their tests pretty frequently. So their tests, like if we want more serious testing on like exactly how much power, like how powerful is this thing, we would typically go to GAD and ask them more so than our playtests, because our playtests, our in-game Wild Rift playtests. In-game is the name of the team, by the way. Not like that. I'm not saying that the tests are in game. Obviously, that's true. But the in game is the name of the team that I work under. Anyway, the in-game Wild Rift playtests, there's pretty large skill gaps in that test, so they're not necessarily the best for balance. Like I would say, probably like 25% of playtests that I'm in, I end up blowing up by like picking some random champion and just getting a million kills and just being like, well, I'm trying to hold myself back here, but it's hard because I'm significantly better than most of the players in the test. And I'm not like trying to dunk on them. It's just like the skill gaps are large, and I recognize that fact. Um, there are other good, like other very skilled players. Like one of the other designers on my team is also quite good, and he does blow up the test sometimes. But sometimes it's like a few days ago, I think it was like it might have been Thursday. I think I picked Nunu. It's like I've played Nunu in Wild Rift like 5 times maybe, and I picked Nunu and I just got like 8 kills in the first, like 6 or 7 minutes of the game, and I was like, this game is so over. I'm like 8-0 on Nunu. I think I was like 8-0-5 in the first like 7 minutes or something like that. And I was like, this game is like so unbelievably over. There's like nothing really that can be done here. Um, Let's see. Suffering from success. Let's see. Will you consider adding more tanks in Baron lane since we only have 3 tanks in that lane? I would personally like to do that, and I know that. So I don't want to speak for Roguefool necessarily, but I know that is something that he is very like being. He's on the champs team now. He used to be on my team, but Roguefool has been very, very open about when he's doing champion pitches or like when he's working on the champ's schedule, like the upcoming champ schedule, one of the things he is most concerned about is like role diversity and ensuring that there's strategic diversity for champions. And so bringing in champions that have unique playstyles for their role, or making sure that we maintain the correct balance of like champions per role. That is something that he has been very 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 open about, like wanting to pursue, like making sure that role diversity and strategic diversity are in a good place in the game. So that is something that I can't necessarily speak to, but I know that that's something that he has been really a huge proponent of. Is something like, hey, we maybe have like a pretty small number of tanks in the Baron lane, especially a small number of tanks that function well in the role right now. So like, well, that's like a good motivator for making a champion like Shen, right? And there's probably room for a few more tanks in the Baron lane, honestly, because obviously in comparison to the number of fighters in the role, they're a little bit more limited for sure. Let's see. ADC has the lowest champion pool. It's not necessarily that's not necessarily true, because ADC is the like ADC is the role that has the fewest number, or that has the like only one class, right? So in terms of total number of champions per class in role, AD carry is actually the highest. But in terms of total number of champions, if you only consider AD carries as viable Dragon Lane carries, then yes, it's the lowest number overall. But that's because there's only one class if you're only considering AD carries, which is kind of the reason why like I and the other Wild Rift designers are kind of like, if people want to play mages in the Dragon Lane carry role, we're kind of like, yeah, you should probably do that, because the reality is having only one class in that role doesn't really make that much sense. Can we get good AP champions in the jungles? There's not that many options. I would love to make more AP junglers, but I can't promise anything there. Again, I'm not on the champs team, so it's not really my area. Please don't kill AP Karma mid. I mean, things, Karma is shipping the way that she is. There's nothing I have already decided how the way that Karma is going to ship. So there's nothing to be done. What's been done has already been done. Can you bring in the Moonstone Master Blaster? If I pitched that on the Wild Rift, people would look at me like I had three heads or something. There's no way I'd get away with putting that temp name into the game. Actually, I guess I could theoretically change. I could do a future layer change such that it would only appear in playtests. People have done that before. We have some like kind of funky stuff going on in the future layer for playtests sometimes, which is pretty funny. What do you think, Diana Jungle these days? Jungle Diana is actually pretty good. Like statistically speaking, it's strong. It's like there's a reason why. So actually, this is really funny. When we were shipping the change that made her passive deal 10% damage to monsters, we like localized that change, and we originally had it set at a higher value. I don't remember what it was, but we were like, yeah, Jungle Diana should, we should buff up Jungle Diana. Like people want AP junglers. Diana is could be a functional AP jungler. We should make this passive do way more damage to monsters. So we like localized this at a high value. I think it was, I want to say it was 150%, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember. So I think we like localize this line. We like get it translated into all the languages before we ship it, and we're like, okay, this is going to be sweet. And then we like look into the data a little bit deeper and look at how much this accelerates our clear, and we're like, this is way too much. Like this is actually like way too much. But we're like, so we ended up being, well, we don't really need to do anything to buff Jungle Diana, because the clear currently is actually like already pretty good, and she's actually doing quite well statistically in the jungle. But we already localized this, and we'd like to be able to buff her in the jungle in the future easily if we want. So let's just ship it at 110% and have this lever in the future if we ever want to buff Jungle Diana. So we could probably take another look back into it and see if she's gotten weaker over time, because I haven't looked at her, jungle data recently. But realistically speaking, Jungle Diana is strong, or at least was strong. I don't know the exact state right now. And we have that localized line now, the jungle monster damage, so we could change that number whenever we want in the future, like easily. Even in a A or B patch, we could do that. One thing to note is that one of the things that kind of restricts us on Wild Rift that is difficult for us, that doesn't happen in PC, is that the A and B patches, it is hard to localize things, which means it can be very difficult for us to do changes that change the text of anything. It's possible, but it's just much harder, and we can only do like one or two of those per patch, really. and it comes at a higher cost. So we can't really localize stuff in the A or B patches too frequently, unfortunately. Who's going to be released first, Shen or Karma? I actually don't know. I need to check with them on that. What do you think about range champs being so disadvantaged in the jungle because melees have cleave? Will this ever be changed? That is something we've actually spent a lot of time talking about. I can't necessarily tell you that we're going to do anything about it, but I can tell you that is something that we have actually very recently spent a huge amount of time discussing and talking about, like, do we want to make changes here? What would those changes be? What do we want to do about the fact that, like, melee cleave kills the, like, small jungle monsters for free, and that seems to be causing a number of problems in the game around, like, attack speed based champions and things like that. Let's see. Also remember Fizz Jungle, guys? Yeah, Fizz Jungle was a good one. I used to play Morgana Jungle. She's good at. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't the one who pitched the Morgana Jungle buff that we did after Morgana shipped, but I was a huge proponent of it. I saw that change list on my board, and I was like, yeah, let's do this. I love buffing, like, unconventional junglers, especially AP junglers, because people do seem to want those more than others. We've seen like 10 seconds of patch review. I haven't even started the patch review. Maybe I should. Okay. Here, I'm gonna address chat here a little bit, and then I'm gonna move on to the preview video. I don't know if you can say, but according to the Chinese Wild Rift website, the Hullbreaker stats have been released. It's the same passive stats for ranged and melee. I cannot say. I don't know. I don't know if there's. I don't think there's been anything official released, but maybe there have. But I'm just gonna avoid saying anything about the exact stats or anything about the exact numbers on any of the items. So I'm gonna stay away from that. No, where was all good? Yeah, sorry. But yeah, I can just generally say, like, we'll see how Hullbreaker works out. I've had a good time with Hullbreaker in testing for sure. As has the designer who worked on it originally. He I forget what his like summoner name is, but so, and then just in case he doesn't want his name out there, I'm not going to say his name, but he's had a very good time with the Hullbreaker in testing, just buying Hullbreaker and just hard split pushing in our tests. Let's see. When is the patch notes? I cannot say when the patch notes will be. But they'll be before the patch, or I think at the same time as the patch, just like normal. Actually, I don't know if we technically post the patch notes slightly before the patch goes live, or like at the same time. Now that I think about it, I'm actually not sure. It's a good question, though. I should find out. I'm actually not really sure. All right, let me start the video at least, and tell me. So here, I'm gonna watch chat. I'm gonna start the video, and tell me if the volume is off, if it should be like higher, lower, like that kind of thing. But I'm gonna start the video and talk over, and I'll pause it and talk it over.
Hey everyone, Alan here from the Wild Rift team. We're back once again with your introduction to the latest patch. For this episode, we'll be taking a deep look into 2022, including our upcoming priorities as a team and what you can expect from us this year. Let's dive right into the state of the game.
Excellent. Love to hear it.
We believe we've made some good progress over the past few patches, with game balance and champion balance in a decent place, and stability and latency.
Maybe a bit louder? Alright, I'll do slightly louder.
Said, we hear you and know that there are still issues with game fairness, including AFK and intentional feeding.
Do I know the guy? I've talked to Alan a couple times, but I don't know him super well or anything like that.
Based on your reports. These are really high priorities with the team, even if we don't have specific updates today. We're still working on releasing into South Asia, as well as our console version of the game, but we won't have any updates on those in 2022. We appreciate your patience while we've been working through these, and we look forward to providing...
Game fairness why not include in patch since it's the highest priority? I don't work on that team, so I don't know, but I'm sure that it's an issue of they just simply don't have the thing that they're working on ready, or they more likely they're working on more than one thing would be my guess, but I don't actually know.
When we can. Today, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about gameplay. Looking at patch 3.1, we're taking a big step forward with our largest gameplay overhaul yet. Wild Rift is going elemental. Elemental Rift is an evolution of the current Wild Rift map, adapting the dragon and terrain mechanics from League PC, but with a few streamlined changes. This will look a little different from what you saw in January, because we're
I wonder where these clips are from.
A few new things. In addition to team comps, runes, and item builds, we want to make games play out differently each time. Between objective team coordination and individual ability to impact a game, Elemental Rift will give us more tools to make sure that the game remains dynamic and fun.
All right, so let me catch up with the chat here. Let's see. Uh, Elmers will be unranked only at the beginning. Yeah, I want your opinion on Cloud Drake being removed. I don't know how to feel. I just don't like Cloud Drake at all. Really, it's like like when I first heard when someone first mentioned to me internally that was like we're thinking about removing Cloud Dragon. I was like, my first thought was like, that's weird. Why would we remove a dragon that we spent all this time on? And then my immediate second thought was like, oh no, that makes complete sense. No one likes Cloud Dragon. And why would we bother putting this in the game and putting a bunch of effort into making it work in Wild Rift when players clearly don't like this dragon? The version that's been in PC in every version of the Elemental Rift system and in Wild Rift is like just not appreciated relative to its power. It's just like, you know, it can be as powerful as we want, but it's just like no version has ever been really very well appreciated, and the terrain, especially in PC, is just like not very interesting. So it's kind of like, why would we want to bother with Cloud Dragon, right? Like, I think it makes a lot of sense to take it out. Is my personal take on it is like, look, if players don't like Cloud Dragon, great, we're taking it out. If you like personally like Cloud Dragon, it's like, well, I guess that kind of is not great for you, but the reality here is just like most players don't like this thing, so why would we put a bunch of time and effort into making it when we could have the more exciting dragons be more common, right? Same thing with the terrain, right? Um, There's also another thing where, and I actually don't know. I haven't talked to the people working on this in Wild Rift, but in PC, there's actually issues around like how much memory the game has and like the different terrains and stuff like that, and then if like loading the different dragons because memory optimization is a huge thing in PC League because it's supposed to work on like a trash laptop from like 2002 or something. So like they spend a lot of time optimizing around memory. That's like one of the reasons why they had to do a lot of like really clever, careful things with the new dragons. But I assume we probably have some similar considerations around like not loading a million dragons, not loading a million dragons with Cloud Dragon. So cutting it probably makes some sense. Um, I love Cloud Drake Sedge. I like super fast Ramus Sedge. Yeah, I mean, obviously there are players that like everything. Everything that we have, especially removing anything, has a cost, right? There are players that like anything that we have. But in this case, it's kind of like a deal where it's kind of like, look, we think this is value positive for most players, and in general, the power of this thing is not super appreciated by most players. So we think it's value positive to put our time and effort in making things elsewhere, and to simplify this system a little bit. Any plans to add Hextech Drake? Not at the moment, no. Um, does Soul equal Elder? Not in the current system that we're working on, but it's possible. So something I'll note is that there's a lot of experimental things going on with the Elemental Rift. Well, for some reason I couldn't remember the name there for a second. With the Elemental Rift system, it is possible that we might try out a version where Soul and Elder are the same thing, but the current version that we're testing is they are not. What do you think about Hextech Dragon on Wild Rift? I personally like Hextech Dragon. I like how the terrain is more impactful than the other terrains, but we will see. How do Infernal Soul attacks work with melee champs having AoE attacks already? Exactly the same way you'd expect them to work. They work exactly the same way. There's the fact that melee attacks are AoE has no impact on Infernal Soul. What happened to Shyvana W without Cloud Dragon buff? We need to do some work on Shyvana to figure out what we want to do with her in the future. That has not yet been determined. But that is something we're working on. Will there be an exclusive Drake only for Wild Rift? Not at the moment, but maybe in the future. Wait, to clarify, is Elder a true damage burn or the execute? So to be clear, we have not necessarily locked up every single mechanic for Elemental Rift, and I am not working on Elemental Rift myself, so I can't necessarily say exactly what their current thoughts are or which version. Like, we've tested a lot of different versions internally. Like, they've been experimenting with a lot of different stuff, but the current version I believe that they're planning on shipping, but I'm not 100% sure, that is Elder Dragon is both. It is both the laser and the burn. But again, I'm not saying that that's necessarily the version that you'll see because they're still determining which version they want to ship. So when endstep can be in Dev Diary video, I don't know. I don't think there's any plans for that. But if they asked me to be on, I'd certainly say yes. Pog laser. Yeah, I actually quite like the laser. I mean, I said this in the podcast I did with Excondrel and Stuart, but it's like I think the like having just burn on Elder is like really lame, and it's just it doesn't really showcase the power of the buff very well. The laser is like a really visceral like noticeable way to just show players like, look, you're getting laser beamed by this thing, you're dead. Um, I have an unrelated question. What happened to Nemesis duels? I feel like there could be possibly more. I personally like the Nemesis duels, but I believe what happened, I'm not 100% sure, so you'd have to ask someone on the Champs team this, but I believe what happened is that Champs team found that players didn't really, like that Nemesis duels didn't really up engagement, and that the feedback around Nemesis duels was not particularly good, even though, like, anecdotally, my experiences with them have been positive. What I believe they told me when I last talked to them about it was that they said that generally speaking they did not like review well in like the feedback that they were getting and from surveys and stuff like that, and so because of that they weren't that likely to spend a lot of time working on them for new champions. But I'm not 100% sure that that's what happened, but I believe that is what I heard last time I talked to them about it. um, we need you in Dev Diary Twitter, you can do it. Is there going to be an exclusive game mode for players to test Elemental Rift, or will it be live in PvP and ranked games in 3.1? Game mode first is the plan. Um, it's designed if you get it, you're highly likely to win. Yes, the intention is that the laser is to is there to make it so that you win a lot of those games. Um, let's see.
We're also looking to
So let me
even out the
get
gap
through the
between
video here.
coordinated teams and solo players. We have a few ideas on how we can achieve this, and trying a variety of changes in the future will help us hit these goals in the most satisfying way possible. With a huge change like this, we want
The numbers on the burn would not be the same, by the way.
Adjustments. So we're thinking of Elemental Rift as part of a testing phase. In patch 3.2, you might see a version of it that looks very different from what you'll see today, because we're still exploring different options and deciding what will work best.
Yeah, so to be clear, to reiterate this point, Roguefool actually asked me to be very, very clear about this on my stream, because I was talking with him about this, and he was actually considering coming on the stream. But I think he'll probably come on later. I'll have Roguefool on the stream at some point, but it'll probably be closer to like Elemental Rift, because he's actually working on Elemental Rift even though he's on Champions team. But to be 100% clear about this, to be upfront, the Elemental Rift version that we try out first in 3.2 is going to be very experimental, and we're looking, very, very heavily at player feedback for this. It's like we're going to be trying some stuff that's probably pretty out there, and we are going to be very, 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 very like aggressively looking for player feedback around this stuff. So again, just wanted to be clear here. That's something that Roguefool asked me to be upfront about. Is like, hey, look, can you tell players like we really, really, really want players to play like 10 games of Elemental Rift when that comes out, and like give us some feedback about like how they feel about the game and like the differences in the game, because he's been trying a lot, like they've been trying some really out there stuff, some different stuff, and like the stuff that you see here might not even be the same exact stuff that you'll see in the final in the version that we try out first. Will we ever get Yone since Yasuo is already very popular? I think we'll probably do Yone at some point, but I'm not on the champs team. I can't necessarily speak to like when or why we might do Yone at some point. Do you feel like Yuumi hasn't still reached her balanced spot? I feel like she's still struggling, maybe because per PC there's no mana regen items / sources in Wild Rift. The mana regen buff wasn't enough. Yeah, I think we probably should do some more stuff with Yuumi, but I think the bigger problem is that players just don't actually use her Q very much, her prowling projectile very much, and when they do, they still don't hit that much. So I think we should probably do something about that rather than just straight buffing her. The mana regen stuff is like maybe not necessarily the most important thing, but I think we could just buff her passive mana recovery if we wanted to, or I think we should probably do that at some point. With Hullbreaker coming, does that mean towers might eventually get a buff in some way? I think we're more likely to make towers less valuable than we are to make towers stronger. But no promises on whether we're going to do that or not. But I think currently our thought process is like, we like how towers die easily, but we don't necessarily love how easily it is to snowball off of like just taking a couple of towers. They give a lot of gold. And it's possible that especially with Hullbreaker, we might want to reduce that value. Where do you want the feedback to be? Twitter, Reddit? I'll probably follow up more with that in the future, but I think Twitter and Reddit are like okay places. Rogueful in particular spends a lot of time reading like Reddit feedback and stuff like that. But I'm not honestly sure where he would prefer the feedback to be most. Um, but I can say for sure, uh, Reddit is a place that he spends a lot of time reading. And I mean, you can see on like he comments there pretty frequently, right? It's like if you look at his Reddit account. Let's see. As a non-PC player, I understand literally nothing about element order from the patch video. Yeah, that's definitely understandable. Um, Mad Seraphine not using empowered W in the video, so I can't see if it's getting changed. Got him. Uh, let's see. What about Mythics again? Mythics are almost certainly never coming to Wild Rift. Not a guarantee, but it's very unlikely we'd ever do Mythics. Mythics have a very specific set of goals in PC. Like the reason why they made Mythics was that they had a very specific set of goals for the item system. The reasons that we have our item system in Wild Rift are very different. Like our goals for the item system are very different. So there's not really any motivation for us to make Mythics, like the Mythic system. So there's just not really much a reason to do that. Let's see. Can I bribe with 3K of my taxes to you guys to bring Echo? Because I play none of these champs. I would love to do Echo. Echo's actually one of my more played champions in PC. I am a huge fan. So, if anyone is stopping Echo from being made, it's not me. Because I love Echo. And I would love to have Echo in Wild Rift. A dude was asking Rogueful about leaks in the comments. That's pretty funny. I agree on Yuumi projectile feeling hard to land. Maybe it's too fast or maybe controller too sensitive. Yeah, I think it's a combination of like the turn radius might be a little bit too wide, and I think the range limiter is a big one as well. Like the current range limiter is kind of a problem. Does that mean we would get more powered down mythics as in Divine Sunder? Yeah, more stuff like Divine Sunder is definitely possible. If we feel like the item is good and we just want to make a Wild Rift version of it, we'll just make legendary versions that are like mythics, like what we're doing with Divine Sunder. Yes, that is exactly what we would do. Echo from Arcane, yeah, Batchest for sure. Let's see. From what I've seen, there's a plateau the player reaches in Emerald High Diamond. Why don't you spread the plateau? I don't know anything about matchmaking. I can't tell you anything about that. Would a champion like Azir fall in the same difficulty? No, Azir's a little different. Azir doesn't have a bunch of like burden of knowledge mechanics. Implementing Azir physically would be difficult because of the way his soldier auto attacks work. Would not play nice at all with the Wild Rift auto attack system. Like how exactly would that work? Azir is just less likely from the perspective of like he's not that popular. He's like players real like the people who play him aren't like crazy attached to him. He's not like this crazy one trick champion. Strategic diversity, he's okay because he's a sustained magic damage dealer. But there are other champions that do that, like Cassiopeia, that we could make that would be less likely to be problematic. So, like Azir, from a controls perspective, seems like a pretty significant issue. And then also he's a huge pro problem, and like there's just a bunch of problems with Azir that I think make us not that likely to make him. It's not impossible by any means, right? It's like, but the controls with Azir would be an absolute nightmare, right? Like that just seems insanely difficult to me. And like if Rogue Fool's here or like one of the other champions designer are here, you can feel free to correct me. But it's like my perspective on that is looking at it as like I have no idea how most of the controls would work on that champion, right? Like how do you determine which sand soldier target? How do you determine how your auto attacks work, like, and where you summon your sand soldiers? Like that all seems really tough. So I don't know. Is Vex possible in Wild Rift? Yeah, Vex is definitely possible. Her controls are very straightforward, and I think she'd be a good champion for Wild Rift. I think having a like somewhat even like mildly anti-mobility champion in Wild Rift would be good. I could be wrong, but it seems like Fawn of Life is outperforming Airy in most circumstances for a Channer. How does that compare to the data you have? We nerfed Fawn of Life because it was outperforming Airy in most circumstances. We think they're a little closer now, but I haven't spent a bunch of time looking at the more recent data. Oh, sorry, I have my League client open and someone invited me to a game. Let me close that real quick. I was playing TFT yesterday. Apologies for the noise. Let me close that out. Anyway, but the last I looked at the data we have is like pretty much even performance overall. What is your thought on the champion rune? I hate champion. I think champion we should remove it and replace it with something that people would actually like. Champion is supposed to be this like all-in high risk, high risk high reward rune, except that the risk it feels so high and the output that it gives you is so unappreciable is that it's kind of just like like who wants this? You know, like who really wants to play around this thing just to get 8% damage? Like it's just not that interesting. Um, my personal opinion is just I would love to just take that thing out and replace it with something else. Is there any possibility for us to have access to the data you guys have, such as win rate and pick rate in the future? There is on the my personal opinion is I would be fine with that, but generally speaking, on Wild Rift, people are opposed to spending the time and effort to create an API. So I think that is unlikely to happen in the future at any point. Um, and I'm not going to get into like all the reasoning behind that and stuff like that. There's been a lot of discussions, and there's been a lot of, like I'm sure when Wild Rift was in development, that is something that they heavily debated internally, and it was decided no, no API at one point, but I suppose it's something that maybe could be revisited in a year or two, and like, but I think it's unlikely that opinions would have changed overall. Why Garen doesn't stack Conqueror with the 3 ability? That is a special case in PC that we decided not to implement in Wild Rift for a bunch of reasons. But like ultimately, a Conqueror is 1 stack per ability, or like Conqueror in Wild Rift is 1 stack per ability. The thing that it allows it to stack Conqueror in PC is literally just a special case, right? It's like it literally violates the rules of Conqueror, right? Like, and that was made, and like, I think it's questionable at this point whether that ended up being positive or negative for the character overall. Like the fact that it stacks Conqueror in PC means that he literally has no other runes. You cannot take other runes. Like if you don't take Conqueror, you're just trolling on Garen, right? Like it's just incorrect to not take Conqueror, which is like, sure, it gave him a good rune that he feels good about taking, but it also means that he never gets to take anything else in PC. And there's trade-offs to that, right? Is there a possibility of creating an exclusive champion only for Wild Rift? Yeah, that's definitely a possibility in the future, but I'm not on the champs team, so I have no idea if that's something that they're pursuing, but it's certainly possible. I have a strong opinion about the API decision, but I'm not going to say it. Yeah, I mean, like I said, my personal opinion is I personally have nothing against like having the API, and I think there are some conversations from my perspective that would be a lot easier if I could just say like, look, here's the data, you can see this, like I can understand like the way that the PC team uses data is like a lot more straightforward and upfront, but I can't do the same thing, which is like a little bit unfortunate in one aspect of things. That being said, I do think that there are some issues that come around with having the API, and I can understand why we didn't have decided not to go with a public API. Um, does Karma and Shen release simultaneously? I'm actually not sure exactly their release dates. I need to check with the champs team about that. So I'll probably be doing that this week. Could Rek'Sai coming to Wild Rift kind of channeling to use digging on her? I think Rek'Sai is unlikely. She's like a very low popularity, she's a low depth, low popularity champion that offers basically no strategic diversity compared to other early game bruisers like Xin Zhao or Lee Sin, right? It's like we have several champions that do basically the same role that she has, and she is not a particularly popular champion. Sure, she's from the Void, so like maybe with a Void event, we might want to do some like more Void champions like Rek'Sai and Cho'Gath. Like that's probably how she would be most likely to be added to the game. But in terms of the metrics that I know overall, like value, like I value champions at in my personal like view, it's like seems unlikely. Heimerdinger, Seth from Arcane. I like Heimerdinger, but I don't know if he'd really be that great for Wild Rift. But we'll see. Um, I know it's something. There's a producer on Champs that really wants to do Heimerdinger, but I don't know if that's going to mean much. I mean, there's people that want to make all sorts of champs that where there's a producer that works close that works for long term stuff like Elemental Rift that really wants a Lowy, and I don't think that's happening. So that probably shouldn't tell you much. Do you think the lifesteal should be a little stronger? No, I think lifesteal's in a good spot. Can't you make Galio cast better, like pressing on the ult button makes it appear the icons of your teammate and drag the button on it so you don't miss it? I think there's probably some improvements that could be made there, but I think the current version is actually not too bad. But yeah, I think there's probably some improvements that could be made there. Let's see. Okay, let me just give Yone. I talked a little bit about Yone early. Okay, let me start playing the video a little bit more here so that we can get through this. I've only been through like 2.5 minutes of this thing, and there's 15 minutes to go.
In this first version of Elemental Rift, slaying each dragon offers a unique buff, but taking enough dragons also grants the Dragon's Soul, a powerful buff that matches one of the dragon's elements. We're still working on how many kills it should take, but in this test run, Dragon Soul will trigger after the third dragon, so you'll be able to obtain 3 buffs along with your soul. Infernal Dragon now
Keep in
grants
mind, this is not
bonus
necessarily the final
damage and
version.
ability power,
They're still
and
working on this.
Infernal Soul creates explosions around your abilities and attacks, dealing bonus adaptive damage in a circle around your target. Mountain Dragon increases your armor and magic resist, and the Mountain Soul grants a shield after not taking damage for a short while. Ocean Dragon restores health over time, and Ocean Soul restores more health when dealing damage to enemies. The first
Is there a way
two
for you
dragons
to
are
replace with the
random.
testing
Then
element
after
art
that,
thing? Not
all
to my
dragons will
knowledge. I
match
don't
the
think there's
element of the
any
rift.
plan we have to do that.
You'll always know which
But it'd be
dragon
cool if we
type is
did.
coming next before it spawns, so you can prepare to fight for it or trade a different objective if it doesn't fit your team comp. You might have noticed that we didn't cover one element. With the arrival of Elemental Rift, we're removing Cloud Dragon.
I love this effect. This is
During
so
our
good.
playtests, we felt that Cloud Dragon offered mostly hidden power that was hard to notice in-game, making it less
Very
interesting to
true.
play around and less enticing for objective-minded teams. Without Cloud Dragon, we'll have extra space for the more exciting elements to shine. You'll also see that Dragons, Rift Herald and Barons spawn later in the game, and Dragons will be a bit easier to take. By building more time into objective spawns, we're hoping to strike a better balance between team performance and individual play. Players will have more options to choose how they want to play the early game, rather than needing to rush the objective right away. We've also totally revamped Elder Dragon, making it much closer to its League PC kin.
Laser beams.
After the Dragon Soul has been taken by a team, Elder Dragons will be up for grabs, offering a game-ending
show us the laser
full-damage
beams.
burn effect and executing enemies when they drop to low health. If your team picks up Elder, it's time to fight.
Think about how mad you'd be if you were
After
this
the
Alistar
second
here, by the
dragon
way.
is
This
slain in
Oriana
each
doesn't do
game,
anything.
The map terrain changes significantly, offering new gameplay opportunities that match the third dragon's element. The Infernal Rift burns away brush and opens new pathways to red and blue buff. This can offer an advantage to the winning team for deep warding and aggressive invades, but also means the path back to your base is much shorter. The Mountain Rift forges new terrain in the jungle, as well as a defensive wall in the front.
This is
of the
actually a good
dragon
clip
pit.
for the Mountain
This
Rift.
rift offers new flanking routes and ways to force your opponents into a bottleneck for an AoE explosion. The
I wonder who came
Ocean
up with
Rift
that.
spawns more brush
I think
across
this is
the
a
map
funny clip
with
for
bumper
Ocean because
crops of
this
honeysuckle.
brush exists normally,
Use
and the
the
only
brushes
brush
for
that Rengar's
surprise
using is the
ambushes,
one that
or
already
just put on
existed.
some rainy lo-fi beats and heal up for the next
Sus. This is a little bit sus. Let me just review this here. Watch this. So this brush is new, right? This one on the right. But the only brush that he jumps out of is this one, which already exists.
Ambushes, or just put on some rainy lo-fi beats and heal up for the next fight.
Just would like to state that there's no differences here in this Ocean Rift.
That players love about this map, and we aspire to keep the
True, the brush does have flowers. It does look nice.
However, we're also hoping to address some of the gameplay pain points you may have encountered. So, we'll be testing this rift during limited time windows in a totally separate queue during patches 3.1 and 3.2.
Okay, so to reiterate this, again, as I said earlier, Roguefool asked me to be clear about this. We're looking for, this is a separate queue, and we're looking to test this, and there's going to be some stuff that's experimental, and we want people to play it and give feedback. Like, we are looking very heavily for player feedback around this, especially people who play a lot of this. Not like play 2 games and say, oh, like, I didn't like this, I'm going back to rank or whatever. More so people who play a lot of games, especially on the Elemental Rift, we're looking for feedback around that. So, we'll see. But that's really what we're looking for here in the separate queues, is like, especially people who play a lot of the Elemental Rift queue. How much do you think these dragon changes will impact split pushing Baron laners? Probably not super significantly, but we'll see. I mean, it depends on which version ends up being gone with, right? It's like different versions have different impacts, so it depends on which version we end up with. Let's see. Wow. Oh, nice. Rookfool's here to answer some questions. Excellent. That's good. Should you take 2 early dragon and take soul, or stack 3 dragon? Blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure what you mean. Prepare your mention for 50 pages SSI on the Elemental Rift. I'd love to see it. So, if someone wants to play, like, 10 plus games of Elemental Rift and send me a 50-page essay, I'll read it. I'm fine with that. Do you think if they add new Nemesis, if they add Collector with the new Drake's effects will impact the game a lot? I'm not sure what you mean. What do you mean about Collector? I mean, I personally like Collector, although Roguefool doesn't. He messages me every day and he talks about how he hates Collector. And he says, "Don't even think about adding the Collector to the game, you idiot." Every day. Not really every day, but he doesn't like the Collector, and I do. So. um, let's see. Okay. I think separate queue will be hard. Yeah, I mean, like we know that. Like we know that adding it as a separate queue will mean that people will play it less. Like that's just something that we accept. But we're still hoping to get at least a good number of players playing it a lot to get good feedback from. But we'll see. So, uh, let's see. Collector with the new effect will and destroy teams. So Collector does not interact with the new Drake effects really at all because Collector executes but when you're below 5%, and the new the laser beam executes when you're below 20%. Well, we could change the thresholds on either of those if we wanted to. Like if we were going to make Collector and Wild Rift, we could set the threshold at whatever number we wanted. But it's not like those thresholds add. It's just those thresholds are their own thresholds, and so if you have the laser beam and you had a collector that executes below 5%, the collector that executes below 5% literally won't do anything because you'll never have hit someone that's below 5%, right? Because your laser will execute them long before they get there. Can we remove Mastermind with Demolish coming from Jungle Main? I would love to do that. I would love to do anything. So, people don't. I love Demolish. I don't think anybody knows that. I don't know if I've talked about this on stream. I absolutely love Demolish. Demolish is my favorite rune. When we test, so I was part of the testing for the original runes Reforged. When I came in, when I started working at Riot, that was the thing we were working on in testing on the game analysis team. The most was Demolish. I came in, most of the Resolve runes were completely different than what they are today, but Demolish was one of the things that was there. I was like, I love this rune. I remember that was the first piece of feedback I ever gave to a designer as a game analyst. I was like, I love this rune, Demolish. I was like, I love Demolish. I love it. This is the greatest rune I've ever seen in my entire life. I love this thing. I want Demolish. I love Demolish personally, so I would love to make Demolish in Wild Rift. I am a huge Demolish fan, and in fact, my icon on in Discord is actually Demolish icon. I've been thinking about changing my Twitter icon to Demolish as well, but I figured people would interpret that as Demolish is coming to Wild Rift, which I don't necessarily want people to interpret. But I love Demolish. Anyway. Let's continue playing here. Please make it so Jungle Main can be free from Mastermind jail. Yeah, that would be nice. Alright, so let's play the video.